this is Kimberlea, and Yoga Snack is our bite-sized podcast where Robbie and I serve up nourishing discussions on yoga, astrology, nourishment, and mindset.
We mix wisdom with personal experiences to serve up quick, insightful conversations that nourish your practice and add flavor to your daily life.
Ready for a quick bite of wisdom? Let's dig in. Welcome to Yoga Snack. Today we're going to cover the fifth yama, which is Aparigraha. Do you remember what that translates to?
Is it not exactly like non-clinging? Is that?
Yeah, non-clinging.
Non-grasping.
Yeah. So what do you think about that initially? Like, where do you go when you hear that that request from the yamas? Don't cling, Robbie.
Don't cling. Ooh, well, I don't know. I feel like it can go a couple different ways. Like in my, out in the world life, I would say the biggest practice for me is to just accept things how they show up, like to not want things to be different than reality is saying that they are. Which is it's tough.
Yeah.
Because we all have our preferences.
Sure.
On the yoga mat, I feel like getting into yin this year, yin yoga has really helped me notice more when I'm clinging in my yoga practice, my asana practice.
Like in your physical body?
In my physical body.
Yeah, because it's got a signature, right?
Right. And even our practice this morning, I was like, I think you said something about like notice where you're clinging or something along those lines. And like even at the very end of practice, I was still softening. So it's a little twofold there, clinging on the mat and clinging out in the world.
Yeah, because I think that's why I like the physical practice of yoga so much. I mean, there's so many benefits to creating self-care movement every day, but our mat is the microcosm of our life and, of the macrocosm. So what we do on our mat, we do in our life. And so it's like, I watch people's foundation, like their feet, their toes cling. They're like little eagle talons, on the mat. And what's so interesting is like the more you do that, the harder it is to actually balance because you lose. Hey, we're back. Who knows what just happened? We lose connection, I think is what I was saying. And that literally happened. I was starting to think about our feet and standing poses and balancing and stuff, that when we cling with our feet and our toes like little talons grasping the earth, we lose the keystone of the foot, which is called it's a seismoid bone under, it's your big toe ball mount essentially. And so it even shows up in our physiology, like the more we cling, it actually makes it harder for us to harmonize and find balance, because it's this ability to give and receive in a way with the earth. And over the years, I've found that people have so much unconscious tension in their feet because they're out of sight, right? We typically have shoes, socks on, they're out of sight. And so when we can't, maybe have that experience up above to the world and show what's really going on, I find that our feet have this whole world going on underneath. And to not have the ability to, lengthen and relax the toes inhibits us from balancing. And there's I'm not sure what lineage, but there's a saying where it's, you can hold more rice in an open hand than a clasped fist. And that clinging limits our ability to connect to life and to flow with life. But if we soften enough, it doesn't mean give up and just dump everything out, but it's can you hold life in the right balance to where you're creating a framework for it and you're a vessel for life to come in and through you without cutting off life by grasping and clinging. You could think about people who hoard, or like first it might be like this thing that feels good and they're interested in it, and then all of a sudden it becomes this obsession and we cling to our possessions, and then it like overtakes our whole life and we can't even move around in our own home, because we have so many things around us and we don't want to let go. So that's it all translates, but I think it's investigating it is what yoga offers us on the mat. And you know our mind is typically the culprit. We're working with the mind, I think, very specifically in this one, because our mind wants control, our mind wants permanence. And I watched, as my kids grew up, people would really be like, oh, my kids are moving up, and they'd be really sad, um, around like letting them move on, and they like cling to these relationships that actually need to change. Like asking things to be the same all the time and holding them on is like holding them back in some way too. And so I think this one's really interesting to really see, like, what is that balance? Where are you? Because you don't want to just like let go and not have any kind of like holding of life, where you're just like, whatever, it's all going to just do whatever it's going to do. Like we can steer that, but how and when do we get really intense? And I think like what you said, like needing things to be different than they are, or needing things always to be the same. Like right now, this is so good. I like this. Like, gosh, even our bodies, skin, I'm 50 now and I'm just like, there's things, and that need for it to be a certain way or look like it did is a clinging to youth. And so it's something to examine, because I think over time it increases our suffering, um, and we can do something about it, by looking at it first. Because if we're not paying attention to any of this, then we're not participating at all. It's just like being done, and then typically our our neuroses are what starts to build up and intensify, and our eagle talons come out and we start to cling and like, oh.
Yes.
We actually today we're at a new location because we didn't cling to needing to be in the podcast studio. So we're at a little coffee shop here locally, in Longmont. So it's like making do. And as we sat down, we're like, ooh, I love this brick. Oh, this lighting's actually pretty nice. Had we been in the podcast studio, we never would have known. So it's like we still found a way to, to create this episode for you all. So, yeah.
Yeah, you just got to be like that elasticity. I think yoga offers you an opportunity to become more elastic and to shift with what's being presented.
Yeah.
I'm going through a lot of different career things this year, and I think the moment I try to like hold on to a certain thing, I notice that it automatically shifts. So I think like being able to stay elastic and to shift and stretch and to go into these different things, like and to be willing to take a step onto a new path or things like that. That's another way that this shows up. Like if I don't know, I feel like college is, yes, you may know exactly what you want to do, or you may have an idea of it, and you spend 4 years or more working towards this thing, and you're kind of locked in at that point,
right?
And there's no really, unless you're just shifting your focus within that study, I don't think there's a whole lot of room for that elasticity. Like it sort of locks you into this very rigid like path.
Yeah.
I read a quote this week. Albert Einstein, his education is what begins once you start to forget all the things you learned in school.
Mm-hmm.
And it just hit me like, oh my gosh, that's perfect.
You know, Brene Brown, she was talking about when her kids were going off to college, what she told them. She's like, I don't want you to have to know what you're doing. I don't want you to need to declare a major or anything else. I want you to major in curiosity.
Mm.
And because there might be like this thing, like you're like, I want to be a dentist, and these are the things I'm going to have to do in order to be a dentist. And if you go in too quickly with that like laser beam focus, you might be missing out on a lot of the other things that are really enticing and could curate you into just a more robust version of yourself. And I think that's really what the invitation of learning should be, right? Is that we're learning, and we're changing our minds constantly, because man, do people cling to their beliefs
all the time. I feel like that's part of the dysfunction we're seeing currently in our world affairs, is a lot of clinging to
the past.
Yeah.
Again, let's go back and do things, make things great again, because they were great back then. And you know, and the evolution of actually life doesn't go backwards. It proceeds, and it iterates and reiterates and changes according to the what's around it, and what's being required of it. And that clinging is this consolidation and compression of life force. And I think it shows up in our body, especially through tension patterns, because it's like try to be angry really quick without like showing it or feeling it anywhere else in your body. Like you can, like your eyebrows, and I don't mean that anger, but necessarily is bad or wrong, but it's like everything that we're experiencing has an energetic signature inside of us, and clinging definitely has an energetic signature in the body. Some people clench their butt. Some people clench their jaw. They cling in that. Like I was a jaw clencher before, and so now it's just examining it, and it's not like doing it right or getting it perfect, but it's like realizing where is it serving you and where is it not serving you, and can you allow life to flow through you a little bit more freely, but you're still responsible for guiding that. It's not just like give up, because even like holding on to the monkey bars when you were a kid, like if you didn't hold on enough, you're just going to slip right off. If you clung to them, you weren't going to go to the next rung, because you're just like petrified. You're going to stay right here, and you're going to be safe, and nothing's going to happen. And then you get really tired and you have to fall off anyways, and also you don't have the enjoyment of swinging from rung to rung to rung. There's this holding on and letting go and flow and pattern that I think life is constantly requesting from us. So yeah.
I like taking yoga asana classes with you, because you seem to be really tuned into like what you need to let go of to get into certain things, like exactly, like if you let go of your left thigh, or like your hamstring,
right,
you don't grip in your in your right shoulder blade,
you'll
be able to do this thing a little more, get into this a little deeper,
because the over efforting is a form of clinging. And I think a lot of times over efforting comes from feeling like we're not enough. And so if we like get it right, then it's gonna, and so we try really hard, because we've been told, I think our whole life, that if you just try harder, you're gonna then finally it's gonna work out. And I did some coaching earlier this year with some business coaches, and and they're like, working harder doesn't actually make you more money. It doesn't mean that you don't work hard and know how to work hard and everything, but like putting in more X, Y, and Z, and that like needing to like grind all the time doesn't actually equate to, you know, success. And I think that that's something really interesting too, because we have to examine the beliefs that we've clung to.
Yeah.
Because if you could just work hard enough, you're going to be able to make it happen. And I don't, I think that it's a misunderstanding. And if we're not willing to change our mind, we're not growing. Like literally changing your mind is growing.
Yeah.
So the belief systems, those old held beliefs that are actually running us. I want to say it's either the poet David White or John O'Donohue. I was listening to one of them being interviewed. They both have these amazing like Celtic accents, and they're both poets, so I get them confused sometimes. But he was talking about examining the 5 beliefs that you walk around the world with. Like, what are they? Like, you know, are people kind or are people assholes? Right? Is there a limitation of money, or is there a limit? You know, like, what are the 5 really strongly held beliefs that run your life? And to look at them. And he said, and for I think 6 months, he said, I want you to form the opposite belief and live from there. And I was like, ooh, that's really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of, you know.
You have to actually examine your beliefs. Number one, like, what is running me? Like, ooh, that's really hard. I have never done that. So clearly, I'm just inviting our listeners to just, you know.
Yeah, there's got to be like a level of like reparenting yourself almost, like around your beliefs, like constant like reminding yourself when you slip into that old thought pattern. No, this isn't true.
I think too, that's why traveling is always such a way of resetting my mind. Today, after class, I was talking to one of the students, Stephanie, and she just got back from Portugal, and she's like, my synapses were constantly firing. Like nothing is familiar, nothing is the same, and it's this like constant, like in a state of growing and learning and expanding yourself constantly.
Yeah.
And I think too, when people get in a very closed place in their life where everything is so familiar, everything is so predictable. When we live in a really small, you know, predictable environment, and there's this sort of layer of certainty that we're living in, which is an illusion because nothing is certain. And I think then it begins to curate our reality of being very small. And so then anything that's different is more offensive, you know? And so when I have family members that live in a small area of the country and they never travel, they never move, or if they have, it's with, you know, like with a religious group who has an agenda and, which is fine. I think there's a lot of wonderful things that are being done out there, but to open up and to go to a place without an agenda and you're the one showing up, being received by another country, another culture. It's a humbling experience and it changes us, you know, because we, like in India, there is India time. Like it is not like being in America. There's a different time wave and we are very attached to this precision of time and having things, you know, happen in a certain way. And even like when I go to visit my mom, she lives in the Caribbean, it's island time, baby. Like your schedule, even like she'll like schedule somebody to do maintenance on something in her home and like 2 days later. And you can't like here we would reviews and get like wound up and you know, and there it's just the way of life. You know, like it's more laid back and it's this, you know, not that one way is better than the other, but man, when you travel, you're going to have to learn how to inhabit that culture, right? Instead of coming in and imposing your beliefs and ideas around the way things should be, because even that we cling to. And I think the more worldly we become, and experience other cultures, it opens us in ways where we have to really reassess our beliefs, and we should be doing that. So your beliefs are not necessarily your values, but they can incorporate your value system. Like you can still incorporate the value of honesty and, and kindness and compassion. But sometimes our belief systems, we're not actually fully allowing those things to develop in ourselves. As we've squeezed it into, well, only you deserve my compassion because of this, right? We cling to that, and it's hard. Like this whole human thing is really, it's really hard. And left unexamined, I go back to this constantly. Left unexamined, it's those tendencies, and it's our ego. Because our ego is what tends to be those eagle talons, clinging and gripping and clasping to things, because our ego doesn't want to die. It doesn't want things to be different. It wants to have maximum control. And we have to loosen our grip a little bit. We need an ego. But like that's, people say ego death. And I'm always just like, oh, how's that going for you? I don't think we're here without an ego, but it doesn't have to be the predominant way that we're moving through the world.
Yeah. I think you can experience your ego dropping away for a short spell.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think if you think that you've dropped your ego completely, you may be playing yourself.
Yeah, that's your ego. Really clinging so tightly, you don't even recognize it anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting stuff. Yeah, maybe even, thinking about like cooking and baking and things like that, like what works at sea level, it does not work up here. We're, at altitude in Colorado. And so even though like recognizing that even inside of these formulas that seem very, very solid and precise and predictable, there's still this element that's always negotiating.
Yes.
And maybe even like ingredients, quality of ingredients, the type of flour,
so many variables. And that's, I think, was something that I needed to let go of as a baker, was scrolling Instagram and seeing how everyone's crumb is turning out, how open it looks. And, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like, oh, wow, that looks so much different than mine. But then just like having an appreciation for the way I do it, I think, and that was something that wasn't available to me until I got deeper into my yoga practice. And was like, okay, and really letting go of those expectations for how I thought things should turn out, and just having, like I said, that appreciation for how I do it, and just being like, well, this is my thing.
Yeah,
it's different than so and so on Instagram.
Yeah, in the Bhagavad Gita, so there's part of it is about a warrior going into battle, but he's confronted with all of these people who actually at some point in his life were really important to him. But they're on the other side, and he has to go to battle with them. And Arjuna is the warrior, and Krishna is his advisor. And Krishna is talking about how you're a warrior, and this is your obligation in this life, is to show up and do this thing. And inside of their dialogue in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about acting without the fruit of the action being the reason for action. So clinging to the reward and the outcome, right, is a creation of suffering. And so so having rigor and precision and showing up and doing your job because nobody else can do it just like you, all of that's really important. But it's also with that underlying understanding that just because you do the thing, you're not expecting the outcome. It's not a guarantee. There's no certainty that you're going to show up, be a good person, work hard, and then all of a sudden these things are going to just fall into place, you know?
Right.
However, if we have our eye on the prize and not on what we're doing, our focus is somewhere else and in the present moment, and our full attention and energy to what we're doing is not there. And so the likelihood of what we are hoping things to work out to is less and less. We just have our eye on the prize. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So one of my teacher, Douglas Brook, he talks about this. He's like, so anybody play soccer, you know? And he said, you know, if you're out there and you need to score a goal to win the game, and your mind is focused on you running around, ripping your shirt off after you won and with your fist pumping in the air, your focus is misaligned with what you should be doing. And you focused on the outcome versus being in the moment and doing what only you can do. And that's really challenging, right? Because we want our efforts to be rewarded. I feel that lately, like heavily in my life, you know, like I'm just like, I need, you know, things to be different than they are. And even though we know better, we have this tendency still towards that, right? So it's not bad or wrong, but it's like, can we check ourselves? Can we look at it and see it and realize that, oh, I'm contributing to my suffering by needing this to work out in a way, or it didn't show up the way I wanted, or whatever. And really the question is not, you know, whether or not you did the thing and it was successful. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? You know, and that's a better question, I think, for us to ask ourselves more than, did I do it? Did you get it done? Did you do the thing? And that's a very dry way of looking at the world versus like, was it worth it? Even though you didn't get what you wanted, was it worth it?
Right.
You know, and that richness of the journey, right? We always come back to that sort of generic, like it's the journey, not the destination. This is literally what this is telling us. So
yeah, I have this image of like being older and having limited mobility. And like having regret. I didn't appreciate all the yoga classes and for just the joy of the movement instead of like
getting pro bowl.
Right. And like, so I try to remind myself that sometimes like someday you might wish that you appreciated the present moment. And I don't know if it's, you know, the correct way of approaching it.
It's a great practice though, right? Like
yeah.
It pulls us back in and helps us examine it more closely.
Yeah, I feel like I have these flashes sometimes of older age. If I don't appreciate it the right way now, I'm gonna then shucks.
Right.
You know, I kind of fumbled that one.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, youth is wasted on the young, you know, and that there's that where we say that. And I think too, a way that I reset myself sometimes is, there might be like things that now show up in my body or my skin or my, you know, like all this stuff. And it's like, there'll be this moment of like lamenting and like, oh, it used to be this way, or it used to feel that way, or it used to this or that. But in 10 years from now, I'm going to want the body, the skin, the, you know, like all the things that I have right now. Like, remember 10 years ago? And so we're like always living in this place of like wanting what we already had instead of like what you said really well, is being able to reset and be present. Like, okay, this may not be what it was 10 years ago, but my goodness, what I have now is still something to really celebrate and appreciate and live into, and not need it to be different than it is now, because we're just going to stay in that cycle, that perpetual cycle of wanting we had 10 years ago with our physique or our, skin or, whatever that life is meant to change and evolve through us. And we, if we're doing it right, we're evolving along with it. And that's, being a woman, being in a female body, knowing that in our society, youth is overvalued and the feminine. Like as soon as you start to age, you become invisible, it seems like. And I'm strongly opposing that belief, right? That's a belief. Um, and trying to step into that phase of my life of aging and still staying relevant and still being seen and insisting of my value because of my wisdom and everything that comes along with it. But I see people, women especially, with the procedures and the clinging to youth, and we're resisting, something that is inevitable. And I think it's a privilege to age, because what's the alternative? If you're not aging, you're not alive anymore.
Right.
And also what I see is that resistance and that clinging to youth. I think too it creates dysfunction inside of our own systems and our bodies, and our body takes that on. And, whether it's, changing phases in life. And I hear lots and lots of women talking about menopausal symptoms and things like that as our bodies change and shift. I believe that resistance towards it too, that we live under, like we can even, like I'm trying, to be in this space, but I still live in this society where young looking women have more value in this society. So I still live underneath it, but I believe that is also creating dysfunction inside of our bodies, our hearts, our minds, our systems. I took a training with yoga medicine, and it was women's health, and she talked about how in cultures that revere aging, especially in women, like the Peruvian culture and the Japanese culture, that women don't experience menopausal symptoms. I know. And the moment I heard that, right, because that was a belief system too, that this is going to be terrible. This is going to be awful. This is going to be so hard. I was like, oh, I'm going to wait and see what actually happens. And I'm going to welcome this part of my life as a form of wisdom, and that I'm even more relevant because I have all of this stuff with me. I'm still going to take care of my body, but that there is this loosening of my need to resist that aging process, because I think it actually makes us suffer more.
Yeah.
And even, I've taught chair yoga forever, and my seniors have been a part of my life for almost 2 decades. And I've been so appreciative of having this elderly influence in my life. It's like, these wisdom keepers that have surrounded me, but they've also, most of them are women. They've, moved through the society again, where aging and being in a female body is not seen as, a positive thing.
Yeah.
And they would, oh, it's all downhill from here. Or, oh, you just wait. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I was like, do not impose your belief system onto me. It's like, let's just wait and see, shall we? And no, it's not all downhill from here, because that is also something we cling to.
Yeah.
And we anticipate and expect. Are things going to change? You bet. Can you still thrive inside of those changes? I believe you can. And that's the belief system that I'm going to work on, because that's all a mindset thing. I'm not going to be all, irresponsible and think like everything's just going to be peachy keen. Like things are going to shift and change, but I can shift and change along with them and welcome that, instead of having to put up such a resistance to it and think something's wrong because something has changed. It's like, well, shoot, that's life.
Yeah. And it ultimately comes back to that, if we're 70% water, something close to that. And we're reaffirming that this is going to be a difficult transition. Imagine what that's doing to the molecular structure of the water in your body. It's cementing that in instead of being like, this is going to be a transition that I'm going to gracefully flow through. It's not going to be, these beautiful mandalas, shapes, and bodies.
Yeah, and it's more great.
Sort of alignment, right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So lots of interesting things. So we have finished up with the yamas now. So I think we're gonna try to do a holiday cooking, baking theme coming up because it is yoga snacks. So we need some snacks for this holiday season. We want your mind and your heart to have snacks, but we also want your belly to
nourishment always.
Yeah. Are you doing holiday baking? Or are you taking holiday baking?
I am doing holiday. Yes. I need to get my stuff together and get my holiday ordering form up and live.
Is that all through your?
It's through my Instagram currently, or if you know me personally, you can always reach out.
Yeah.
Sun Sourdough Bakery is where you'll find that kind of stuff. Yeah, plenty of Christmas cookies and wonderfully digestible breads, which we can use all the help we can get this time.
Less resistance in the digestive system. I am in the middle of putting together a retreat to Greece, October of 2025.
Oh, yeah.
Very excited about that. And also New Year's Day, I'm going to do 108 Sun Salutations. It's at Resilient Soul in Loveland, Colorado, but I'm also streaming it through Insight Timer. So if you want to practice with me New Year's Day, burn off 2024 and welcome in 2025 with a vigorous, community practice that'll be New Year's Day, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Yeah.
And some more stuff coming up. So yeah, my YouTube channel has a new fluidity class every week, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. Really good at-home practice, kind of short little bite-sized things that you can do regularly. So check that out.
I'll be joining in either virtually or in person for the 108 Sun Salutations. So you can practice with the yoga snack.
That's right. That's right. Well, we appreciate you guys. You've enjoyed the dialogue we've had on the yamas. We'll probably in the new year we'll hit the niyamas and keep going from there. But let us know what you want to learn more about. Your comments, your likes, your shares really, really matter for us, and that's the way that you can support us the most. And check out our individual offerings. And we just want to thank you guys for listening and being part of our community.
And we'll put a link to any of that stuff we talked about down in the show notes.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well,
see you next time.